secretary cast one ballot.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so moved. Thank you, everybody, for your support.
That's it.
And will all the corporators, directors, and officers that are here tonight please stand, and we will swear you all in. Yes, directors.
Just the ones. Your assistant treasurer.
Okay, repeat after me. Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties incumbent on you as appointed official of Westfield Athenaeum, so help you God? Yes. Thank you very much. Congratulations, everybody. And we appreciate your support in advance for the great year. And we will now welcome Mr. Morin for the financial report.
It's getting out of the way.
The information is in your packet, so we're having a bit of technical difficulty projecting, so everything.
No, it's coming out. Not you, yeah.
Thanks for coming, first of all. Second
I'll
of
turn it
all,
back on.
usually Larry Zabilski's up here, giving his annual report. If you were here last year, you know that he retired. I had a difficult time finding a new auditor. That was on me, but we do have one. But unfortunately, the audit wasn't finished. But we have the financials that we're presenting to him to the audit, which should give you a very good idea of where we stand and what we've done this past year. The first line is cash, and you can see there's two separate columns here, without restrictions and with restrictions. And what that means is this 146 is really our cash, our operating account, the money we can use for everyday expenses, whereas the donor restricted cash is set aside specifically for specific items. That's good. Be it fundraising that we're doing for the renovation, etc. Accounts receivable, we had two things that came in after June 30th, but they were dated June 30th. We get money from the Burke Foundation, and we also get money from our investments from Merrill Lynch, and that's what those two numbers are that total $36 a year. Land and building and equipment, we had a couple things that we did that we bought some computers. We also we were working on the lift. You saw it as you came in. That's in process. So we have total assets there, about $8,700,000. I'm looking at our liabilities. Compared to that, you can see we pay our bills. We're very good at that. We only have $9,000 of payables. And then we have accrued payroll. Accrued payroll is basically the amount of money that the employees earned through June 30th, but got paid in July of the following year, and that was $42,000. And this is just our net assets. And net assets is really the balance from day one. The accumulation of profits going in both the donor and the restricted and the unrestricted accounts. This is basically our profit and loss. We received a little over $1 million from the city of Westfield. Westfield, explain a little bit of it. For us to receive this grant, which is the state grant of $141,000, we kind of hold their feet to the fire in that they have to give us, on average, what we received the last 3 years, they have to give us 2.5% more. So state basically holds towns, and that's for everybody, that if you in fact are going to receive this grant, which is $141,000, they have to do that. The other equation that we have to come up with is 13% of our budget has to be spent on books, which I'll show on the other side when we get to the expenses. We also received other grants. We received grants from Shirtlift, trustees of Westfield Athenaeum. Check my notes. Forgot. Yeah, Cultural Council. Sarah Gillett. Yeah, thank you. Which is $49,000. Those things are usually, the reason they're in this column, those things are usually for specific things or programs or purchases that have to be spent on that, so we can't use those funds for our operations, which is discount. Revenues and finance, we have, the revenues are basically rent, we have leases of a copier, what else we have? We have some fines from late fees, et cetera. The income from our investments, we have $13,000 and $96,000. The $96,000 is tied into our endowment, which is in this column. We use, and from our endowment, I'll go to the gifts too. The gifts we have, $58,000 and $44,000. A lot of that pertains to what we generated from the renovation, specifically for the renovation. Done very well. We did do very well with gifts, but including those gifts, we received money from the Community Foundation, the Burke. We have money with the Burke's left us money. The Community Foundation gives us about $15,000 a year. Fair gives us 10. Lagina, he gives us the other 5. So we had a pretty good year as far as raising funds this year. The endowment account, we take the average of our endowment. Oh, and I skipped over the endowment. I'm sorry. Go back just real quick. The one before. I skipped over our investments. We have an endowment that's now currently over $4 million. It went up about 6% from last year, but because we take the prior 3 years average and we take 5%. So we've taken really the 6% increase in our investments. You can really add another 5%. We probably went up about 11%. So we did very good with our investments last year. Thank you. So here we have the increase in our funds. That's after the money that was taken out. We took out $178,000. So the increase in our investments was $193,000. So we had total income of $1,400,000 from our operations, really, and another $500,000 was donor restrictions. So just under $2 million we've had in revenue this year. We go to the next one. I'll show you the expenses that we have. The expenses that this column here again is from our operations. The biggest amount, obviously, that we have is both the books and our people. We really don't sell anything. So what we do, and this is the amount that we have to spend, but we have to spend less than that. We spent over that to get that state grant that we received of about $141,000. So our biggest expense, the other big expense we had last year was $119,000 of repairs. The vast majority of that was the painting that we did upstairs. And it's but it's an old building, and we have repairs all the time. And in Linda, they pop up when the least expected. So we had total expenses of $1,600,000. So if you go back to the page before, you can see that here's our expenses of $1,600,000. There's our income. So we had about a $250,000 profit. The bulk of it being our increase in our investment. So we really had positive cash flow this year of about $50,000. You go up to. this here shows how we got to our cash of $50,000. We had $250,000 profit, then we have depreciation. This is really the growth in our investments before the disbursements. Distributions, the increase in the receivables, we've had those 2 checks from McLain. Our payables increased by $4,000 from the year before, and our accrued expenses, which was the payroll. So we actually our operations really lost $57,000, but for our investments, we're 107 to the good. So we had an increase in cash of $50,000 from last year's balance of $1,700,000. So that's basically, we really had a pretty good year, all things considered. But this coming year might be tough, I don't know. I think we're okay with our mass grant that we get of about $141,000. I don't know what's gonna happen next fiscal year. So this time next year, I might be telling you a different story. No one really knows what's gonna happen with the state funding when it comes to federal funding, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one thing we're looking at. The other thing we're gonna have coming fiscal year is the renovation, which is gonna be a huge, huge project. And we're looking for whatever help we can generate at anything, as far as that's concerned. But I think when the audit is complete, I think we'll put it on the website, so you can look at it there. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at any time. Thank you.
Move to accept the treasurer's report.
Second, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
So moved. So is there any old business from the floor? How about new business? If we have none, we'll turn things over to Guy McLain for the meeting.
Okay, it's good to see such a great turnout tonight. I want to start with a well-known quote by one of our great novelists, Charles Dickens, and I'm sure most of you will be familiar with this quote. It's at the beginning of the novel, A Tale of Two Cities. And it reads, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was an age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epic of belief, it was the epic of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. I can't think of a better description, and here's the French Revolution, that's part of the Tale of Two Cities. I can't think of a better description of our own times. And here at the Westfield Athenaeum, which serves as both a modern public library and an active cultural center, we face the implication of Dickens' quote each and every day. There's never been a time that offers more information, more books, more films, more art, more music, and more technology than the era we live in right now. Yet, at the same time, we are confronting a significant decline in the general population's ability to utilize all the resources which are literally at our fingertips. Neil Postman, in his book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, pointed out that George Orwell feared the threat of book banning. Postman compared that assertion with the statement of Aldous Huxley, who believed that book banning wasn't the worst problem. Huxley feared that people would simply stop reading books. Recent statistics on reading, especially with young people, make Huxley's fears seem all too real today. Yes, there's been a lot of talk lately about book banning in America's public libraries, and this has been a real problem. Last year, there were more than 10,000 instances of books being banned in the United States. Almost every public library in the country has had books challenged, including this one. But what might be even more troublesome is Aldous Huxley's fear that book reading would become a rare practice. And he expressed those fears almost 100 years ago. What would he think about today? This reminds me of a quote by the author Yun Lee, who said, quote, "What afflicts literature more than book banning is this rapid loss of ability to read for deeper meanings, to grasp subtlety, and to understand ambiguity." We can also look at this problem from a historical perspective. From the first couple of centuries after the invention of the printing press in 1450, reading remained largely an elite practice. But gradually, more and more people began to read, and by the 1700s, with the expansion of literacy and the proliferation of cheap books and newspapers, both the number of readers and the amount of time the average person spent reading exploded to astounding levels. This transformation is identified by historians as the reading revolution, and it may be more important than the Industrial Revolution, since some scholars believe that the Industrial Revolution might never have taken place if the reading revolution hadn't prepared the way. Some have even argued that the growth of democracy and human rights in the 18th century required a large percentage of the populace to be well-read in order for these major political shifts to occur. Since the world of print is logical and rational, reading changed the way people thought. Surely it isn't a coincidence that the growth of print culture in the 18th century led to the growing prestige of reason, the rejection of superstition, and interest in democracy, and the rise of science. Our world today is largely the product of books, combined with a population that has learned to reason from the books they have read. By reading, we make it possible to come to a better understanding of our extraordinary and complicated world. But now we are seeing people, even members of the elite, who cannot or do not read. I'm sorry to say that scholars are identifying a new trend that may fundamentally alter the world created by the reading revolution. We can call it the post-literate revolution. Numerous studies are indicating that the amount of reading time, the reading comprehension level of young people is declining significantly. Approximately a third of high school seniors are basically illiterate, and another third can only read at a basic level, according to the latest tests. Keep in mind that reading is associated with the ability to think analytically, develop better verbal fluency, and increase attention spans. All those measures seem to be in steep decline, which has led some scholars to assert the possibility that we may be entering a period of decline similar to the collapse of elite learning experienced at the end of the Roman Empire. And when the Roman Empire collapsed and Western Europe entered what we now call the Middle Ages, the librarians hidden away in monastery libraries were the ones who preserved the great works of the Greek and Roman world and allowed the rediscovery of those works during the Renaissance. Those brave souls, living in the midst of poverty and social turmoil, preserved the books that form the basis of Western civilization. This brings up a new issue that reading experts, teachers, and librarians are becoming increasingly aware of. Reading isn't natural. Unlike speaking, which humans develop almost instinctively, reading is an acquired skill. And in the process of learning to read, we now know that the brain is literally rewired. Neuroscientist Marianne Wolf points out that reading requires us to connect disparate neural pathways, which aren't duplicated in other skills we learn as we grow up. When we read, our brains must coordinate visual processing, language comprehension, memory systems, and abstract thinking. And we must perform all of these functions in literally fractions of a second. Children who become strong readers develop these circuits through thousands of hours of focused attention on text. But this process of rewiring the brain is being sabotaged by the digital world we now occupy. On average, children are given their first smartphones around age 10, and they spend between 7 and 9 hours a day looking at a screen. But what might be worse than the total amount of time spent viewing screens is the fact that when children are engaged with digital platforms, they are constantly switching between apps, constantly responding to notifications and alerts, and they are constantly watching short-form videos. This creates what is known in scientific literature as continuous partial attention, a state where children are monitoring multiple streams of information but never focused on any single body of text. Let me just point out here that 80% of the time spent on Facebook and 90% of the time spent on Instagram is spent watching short-form videos. I guess you just can't have too many cat videos. The writer James Morin summed this up very nicely when he stated that, quote, if the literate world was characterized by complexity and innovation, the post-literate world is characterized by simplicity, ignorance, and stagnation. Our culture is being transformed into a smartphone wasteland, end of quote. But don't despair. There is also significant data to indicate that all is not lost and that there are some very positive interventions possible. While average reading scores are clearly in decline, the children who are engaged in regular periods of active reading are actually doing better than ever before. And since reading experts, cultural critics, educators, and you guessed it, librarians, are increasingly aware of these problems, many are finding ways of countering this trend. What we are finding is that children who thrive as readers are actively engaged from an early age. And I can't emphasize this enough. Active engagement is absolutely essential. Children should be encouraged to think about and analyze the text they are reading. With toddlers, this might mean prompting them to point to pictures that illustrate the text or encouraging them to predict what will happen next. With older children, it might mean asking them to think about what might motivate the character in the story or think about how the story might take place in their own neighborhood or town. We now know that children who engage in active reading develop neural pathways that lead to deep comprehension. Basically, they are learning to reason and to interact with books in creative ways. But this isn't a problem for just children. We are seeing a sizable decline in reading among adults as well. In just the last 20 years, we have seen a 40% drop in reading for pleasure among the general population. This reading decline is even showing up among the educated elite. But there is an institution that exists in almost every town and city in the United States that encourages active reading on a daily basis. And I'll bet that every one of you know what that institution is. It is the public library. Our libraries here at the Athenaeum are confronting these challenges every day. Let's start with the Youth Services Department. Every day, parents are coming in with really one goal: helping their children become active readers. Sometimes their child is falling behind in school. Other times, parents are coming in with a hope that they can inspire their children to read more actively. Our staff members know exactly what to do. They first find out what the child is interested in already, and then they find books to match that interest. Many children think reading is something you do only in the classroom. They don't realize that there are books on every subject and interest. Time after time, we've seen kids embrace reading when they find books that engage their interests. Librarians know the importance of helping children think creatively about what they are reading. Often our staff will ask the child what they thought of the book. Were the characters interesting? What was your favorite character? Children's librarians know how to engage the child at their level. This is not as easy as it might seem. It's often difficult to coax a child to talk about a particular book or to discuss their interests. You really have to know how to establish rapport with children. Our staff members are very good at working with children, and the results of their efforts show up in the statistics. This year, a total of 41,974 children's books and 828 e-books for children were checked out. And before I go on, the report you have the statistics in your file, it doesn't correspond exactly because I'm emphasizing, I'm pointing out specific statistics to illustrate my points here. So, in addition to the children's books, 5,612 young adult books and 1,126 young adult ebooks were checked out. Total circulation of children's items came to 53,295 items. Total circulation of young adult material came to 9,416 items. These are extremely strong numbers and reflect the hard work of our youth services librarians. But their efforts don't stop simply by placing a book in a child's hands. Our youth services department hosts 226 programs this year, attended by 3,097 children. Since we're open approximately 300 days per year, that means we are hosting a children's program almost every day. And let me just add that programming for children is one of the most important services we offer. If it's important to engage a child in an active way, as we've been discussing, then programming is one of the best ways of doing it. Our adult services department was also extremely active this year. We circulated a total of 58,695 print books and 17,171 ebooks. We also circulated 45,447 audiovisual items this year. In addition to helping patrons find books, our adult services staff hosted 221 programs this year, attended by 2,505 people. And keep in mind that our programming is designed to meet the needs of the community. For example, one of the most numerous questions we receive is requests for assistance with technology issues. So we provide a program where patrons can request an appointment, which might last up to an hour, to work with our technology librarian, who is right here. And over this year, 157 people have taken advantage of this service. And let me just add that I have had more people comment on how helpful this service was than any other program or service we offer. We also hosted a range of other programs in a variety of areas. Those include everything from local history programs to book groups. For example, our archivist completed 108 appointments for patrons needing archival resources. Our local history librarian answered 192 local history research questions. And our outreach librarian hosted programs like our book club, sound healing sessions, a collage club, several author talks, and a breathwork program that was extremely popular. These programs are just a few examples of how the modern public library isn't the library of our grandparents. Our libraries today are equally adept at helping our patrons find a book and helping our patrons fix their computer. To sum up all this activity, the total number of print, books, and periodicals checked out over the course of the year came to 108,300 items. When you add audiovisual items and electronic sources, our total circulation of all materials came to 187,673 items. That's a remarkable number and an indication of all the hard work of 22 dedicated librarians. But the library activities I've just outlined are only a portion of what we do here. The Westfield Athenaeum is not just a library. We are a cultural center for the entire community. And the range of services, information sources, and programs is truly remarkable. Over the last year, we featured 5 exhibits in our art gallery. We brought in some of the best artists in Western Massachusetts for solo shows, and we organized a popular group exhibit showing the work of 14 Westfield artists who were celebrating the 40th anniversary of Arts West, an organization led by one of our board members, Marie Fleheim. We also included educational programs related to the art on exhibit and hosted a trip to the Peabody Essex Museum to see an exhibit on American art, which was an amazing exhibit, by the way. Our History Museum features several permanent displays on the history of Westfield. And every one of these exhibits has been newly installed or updated in the last 3 years. We also have an ongoing rotating exhibit that usually features some aspect of Westfield history. Right now we have an exhibit on Victorian fashion that has been very popular. In addition to our exhibits, we hosted a number of programs related to Westfield history. The highlight of those programs was a series of lectures given by Bob Brown, right here, by far the city's most knowledgeable expert on Westfield history. If you haven't attended one of Bob's programs, you truly missed an educational experience. We also hosted a number of music events. Our Saturday Sound series is very popular and provides entertainment for the whole family. We also featured 3 classical music concerts with musicians from the Springfield Symphony. We are so fortunate to have an auditorium for music performances. The acoustics are excellent in this room, and the size allows an intimacy that is unique for classical music events. And this brings me to the building. We are so fortunate to have a wonderful building to support all of the activities we host every year. Our auditorium allows us to host lectures, concerts, and a variety of other programs. Our great hall is not only beautiful, it provides a wonderful setting for our book collections. Our reference area provides an excellent area for computers to be used by our patrons. And our children's area is inviting and large enough to feature an excellent collection of books and audiovisual materials for children and teens. When I first came to Westfield and saw this library, I was so impressed with the building. The leadership that built this building in the 1920s had the vision and foresight to build an infrastructure that would allow us to host a variety of programs and to serve the community as a multi-purpose cultural center. How many public libraries in New England have a beautiful and spacious art gallery? How many libraries have the luxury of dedicating 2 whole rooms to history? And how many libraries today have an art auditorium with excellent acoustics and can seat well over 100 people? But buildings, especially buildings of this size, need constant care and must be renovated occasionally. That's where we are now. Back in 2018 and 2019, we renovated significant portions of the building, making improvements to the children's area, adding an elevator and a staff area, among other improvements. In 2022, we renovated the read room and added 2 large exhibit cases, allowing us to increase the number of stimulating exhibits on Westfield history. In 2024, we renovated the Rand Art Gallery and brought it back to its original glory. Now we're in the process of renovating and enhancing the Great Hall. In addition to restoring the space to the grandeur it had when the building was first opened in the 1920s, we are updating our patron visitor center and added needing air conditioning to the hall. When we reopen the Great Hall in early 2026, I think all will marvel at how beautiful our building is. But we need your help. Projects of this magnitude are costly. Although we have raised a considerable sum, which has allowed us to initiate the project, we still have more we need to raise. I ask all of you to serve as an advocate for the Athenaeum, to tell your friends and family about all the hard work that is taking place here. The only way for us to be successful is for the community to support our efforts. As corporators, you can be our best advocates. As we have discussed, we live in challenging times, but librarians are working hard every day to counter some of the troubling trends we are seeing today. Although librarians have always played a significant role in supporting educational and cultural activities, there has never been a period where they were needed more. I hope all of you dedicate yourself to doing everything in your power to help us maintain the thriving cultural center we have here in Westfield. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention one of our most interesting patrons this year, our mayor. He not only wanted to visit the Athenaeum, he wanted to bring attention to all the services we offer here. So he planted a tree right next to our youth services door to attract the community to our institution. It worked marvelously. Literally hundreds of people came to see him, and his efforts even led to media coverage. So in order to thank him for his effort on our behalf, we have initiated a contest going on right now to give him the official library name he deserves. I invite all of you to vote for the bear's name in the Youth Services Department. So that concludes my remarks. Thank you. So as Sue mentioned, Linda, who's chair of our building committee, is willing to give people a tour of the construction site. It isn't a construction site, I warn everybody. But if the people who wanna do that, they just go out after the meeting, go out to the hallway, and Linda will take you upstairs.
We'll adjourn this meeting first.
Okay.
Thank